Welcome to Real Talk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee and have real conversations on faith, culture, and society. This is Mark Hyde.
And Chris Fuller.
And on today's episode of Real Talk Christian Podcast, we are talking about something that has taken over America by storm. And Christians apparently don't have too much of an opinion about this. And that topic is the show Game of Thrones. Fuller, you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Thank you for joining us at Real Talk Christian, a place where real Christians talk about real issues impacting the community and the world as it pertains to Christians. Now here are your hosts, Mark Hyde and Chris Fuller.
Mark, winter is coming.
Did you just meme the podcast?
I did meme the podcast.
You meme. Brace yourselves because winter is coming. Now, winter is coming.
It is, really.
It's fall, though. Like, let's not get rid of fall. I like fall.
We just got lucky because they were forecasting snow for tomorrow, but then it changed.
Today was 71 degrees.
74. It got up to 74.
It got 74?
And then tomorrow is supposed to be really cold and rainy and windy. And
that's the definition of South Bend, though.
Yeah.
That is the definition of South Bend. But hey, dude, welcome back to the podcast.
Dude,
you've been gone. I mean, it's gone a little bit for me, but not necessarily gone for the listeners for too long. But tell us the big news, man.
Had my baby boy,
Hey,
baby Shiloh.
We know he's listening right now.
He was a massive baby, 10 pounds, 7 ounces.
Oh, dude, and so last episode I said 10 pounds, 5 ounces.
Yeah,
so
you were
close.
off by 2 ounces. He's 11 pounds, 5 ounces now after 3 weeks.
How
and
did Janelle
20.
do that?
Actually, it only took her 25 minutes of pushing. She was like a champ through it.
Yeah, but I mean, Shiloh, he waited to the last possible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was, we were in the hospital. I mean, it was over 24 hours before she had him. So it was a long time. The good news is I was able to watch a season of Friends while we were in there. I mean,
What was Janelle doing? She was sweating. She was mad.
No,
she was screaming.
She got the epidural right away, so she was good. She was like,
good.
let's watch.
You know, I'm surprised you didn't say Disney movies, though.
So we thought about it,
Okay.
but we're on this Friends kick. I don't know why. We have like the first 5 seasons of Friends on DVD that we found at Goodwill for like 50 cents a piece.
Oh, that's legit.
Yeah, so it was like, we're going to buy them.
I mean, they're taking it off Netflix, what, like next year?
Yeah,
They're
'cause
taking The Office off Netflix,
They're replacing Friends with Seinfeld in 2021.
Okay.
I read an article.
I mean,
it's a good trade-off.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, some people might be mad.
Yeah.
I'm not too mad.
So
about
we
that.
watched that until we started pushing, and then we turned on Pandora,
the push mix.
the Michael Bublé radio station,
How does that get anybody hyped?
and he was born to Louis Armstrong. I believe it was Louis Armstrong's "What a Wonderful World." I mean, there's no other perfect song to be born to than
Let
that
the bodies
song.
hit the floor. I mean, that's the only other.
I would hope the baby's body wouldn't hit the floor though.
Babies bounce, but we don't want to try it. We don't want to try it. But either way, dude, welcome back. We've
Thanks,
missed
man.
you. I've missed you. We went from seeing each other 2 to 3 times a week
to like nothing.
for like a month.
Yeah, it was.
It was absolutely insane. But
was
hey,
sad.
before we jump into today's conversation, today's podcast is fueled by Fair Trade Coffee.
Ooh.
But basically, it's just a I don't even know if it's local. Someone gave this coffee to me, and it's a what's the word? Ethically sourced coffee, where this company has decided to get rid of the middleman.
Mm-hmm.
So every single dollar goes back to the farmers in third world countries to try to get them out of poverty. It's not a Christian
awesome.
organization. It's just that some people who love coffee who want people to
cool.
get out of poverty and stop having to do what they had to do to make money. And now they're just growing coffee beans, man. So
I just want to reiterate that someone gave you the coffee. We've said it once. We've said it a dozen times.
send us coffee.
Send us coffee, everybody. We will drink it and we will talk about it. So if you own a coffee house and want to send us your coffee, we'll plug you in. If you just want to send us coffee, we're okay with that too.
We're okay with that too. Or money.
Or money. I mean, we're working with.
Jesus says where your heart is, or where your treasures is, that's where your heart is also. And
So-
so your heart should be in giving. And if you're trying to get that, extra little goodwill towards you.
RTC is the way to go.
Yeah, that's absolutely terrible. But hey, let's get into today's conversation. Today's conversation is talking about the one specific show, and I'm sure we'll mention other shows too, but Game of Thrones. So before we even talk about the good, the bad, all these different things, Fuller, can you even just tell us about the show, man?
Yeah, I mean...
Because obviously you have every episode memorized. So,
no, I'll be the first to admit, I'm a little biased because I've never seen the show. But I've seen a lot of shows like this show. Not recently, but in my past I've seen a lot. So I kind of know...
Same genre, same flavor.
Yeah, just different storyline, maybe similar feels, but not exact shows. But stuff like it. So Game of Thrones, I went on Wikipedia of all places, but it's the only place I could find like a halfway decent description.
Okay.
Because I've never seen the show. So I wanted to get a halfway decent description. So I went there, and then I went to IMDb.
I love IMDb.
So,
yep.
And got kind of the rating and why they rated it, what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and read through that for listeners that may have never seen the show, like me. Mark, you've never seen the show either, right?
Nope, never.
So we'll take your comments with that you throw at us if you've seen it and you love it. But we ask that you keep an open mind and open heart as we talk about it.
As we crush your worldview.
We're not trying to condemn the world. We're just trying to show Christ's view on it.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about how do you be in the world but not of the world, I think that was episode number 3.
Yeah, something. No, was it episode 1?
No, that was Can God Use Our Past. Number 2
that's
was
right.
Disney.
Yeah.
Would Jesus Smoke Pot was number 5.
4. No, that was number 4. So number 3 would have been in the world but not of the world, I believe. So.
Yep. How do we live in our culture while not conforming to it? So I
Right.
encourage you to go back and listen to that one. But no,
Right.
keep going, man. So talk
All
about
right.
the
So
show.
it says Wikipedia says Game of Thrones is an American fantasy drama television series created by David Benoff. I'm sorry if I butchered his name, and D.B. Weiss for HBO. It is an adaptation of Song of Ice and Fire, George R.R. Martin's series of fantasy novels, the first of which is A Game of Thrones. The show was both produced and filmed in Belfast and elsewhere in the United Kingdom. Filming locations also included Canada, Croatia, Iceland, Malta, Morocco, and Spain. The series premiered on HBO in the United States on April 17, 2011, and concluded on May 19, 2019, with 73 episodes broadcast over 8 seasons. Now, IMDb, this is where I got the rating from and why it was rating. They rated it, or it is rated TV MA, for extremely explicit sequences of strong, brutal medieval warfare and violence throughout, including scenes of rape and torture, grisly and gory images, strong sexual content, graphic nudity, language, and brief alcohol use. So that's kind of what I could find about the show without actually watching it.
Like actually diving in and watching it, right?
And I want to throw out there before we get going, like I said, I've watched shows like this, and if our listeners are anything like me, you watch 1 or 2 episodes and you're like, I've got to watch it all now,
Right.
and it's hard not to stop. Now, obviously, this show is over now. Final premiere was in May of this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to throw out there that, again, we're not trying to slander you. We just want to speak truth. This is Real Talk Christian. We're going to talk about real issues.
Right.
And this is one of those things, we're focusing on this show, but really we should be looking at every aspect of everything that we watch.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And let's just say, before we slap it over the head too much, Game of Thrones is the type of show with the...
Oh, I'd be hooked probably
Dude,
if I watched
definitely.
it.
My favorite stuff is anything with King Arthur. So, like, Merlin on Netflix.
Oh, dude, I love that show.
I finished it. I was not very happy how they finished it.
Yeah.
I like how they ended Merlin, but I don't like how they killed off Morgana after 5 years. That was lazy. And then, but anything medieval. So I love Gladiator.
Yeah.
With oh goodness,
Russell Crowe.
I was gonna say the other guy, but no, Russell Crowe.
Joaquin Phoenix.
But
aka the
I've even
Joker.
seen I've seen 300.
Right. Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, is not good stuff in there.
Right.
I've seen Braveheart. Anything where it's hand-to-hand combat, medieval
Right.
styles,
Right.
specifically with Anglo-Saxon, that's my jam.
Yep.
But I still refuse to watch Game of Thrones because of various reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to what I would say is my view on it. I have Christian friends that have watched it and love it. absolutely love the show. And when I've asked them what it's about, they kind of give me the background story, and I'm like, well, what's it rated? And then they're like, oh, well, it's rated MA. And I'm like, well, why? And they're like, well, it's for violence and, some language and some nudity and some. And it's like, wait, boobs. Nudity, like there's got to be a lot of nudity because I know that there's like some nudity in rated R films. So to be MA, it's got to be like pretty out there. Mm-hmm. They're like, well, yeah, it's like full on sex scenes. And it's like, ooh, yeah, I'm not watching that.
Yeah, like there's a friend of mine, actually the friend who gave me the coffee, actually, not a believer, boyfriend, not a believer. They watched the show, so I've legitimately have asked them. I said, okay, so what's the show about? And I've gotten both sides of the equation, and both of them said, yeah, Mark, you probably shouldn't have watched this show. Right. And you go, well, why should I? They're like, well, aren't you a Christian? You shouldn't be watching that. And it's like, well, why? It's like, people are actually getting, and you watch people get raped. You watch people have sex. You watch people do all these different things. And there's a lot of people who have the arguments of, it's just sex. The church has made sex have to be a bad thing. The Joshua Harris, the whole purity culture has completely thrown that off the bat. And so before we start judging it, it's very obvious. There's lots of boobs, lots of full frontals, rear frontals, rear shots.
Yeah. This is what we've heard.
But there's also tons and tons of violence as well. So I guess here's the question that we probably should start it is, there are some people, some Christian, and I will say this. Let's just answer this question off the bat. Can a Christian watch Game of Thrones? The answer is, well, yes. A Christian can.
Well, you can do anything. It's called free will.
So if it's okay with you, you brought up an article about a Christian's response to Game of Thrones and why it's okay for them to watch it.
Yeah, I did. It's by D.C. McAllister from thefederalist.com. If you guys really want to go in and read the article, the whole article for yourself, shoot us a comment or get a hold of us, a message or something like that, and we can go ahead and give you the link to that. Otherwise, it's I read it for research because I wanted to see what Christians are talking about. I wanted to see the Christians that have brought it up, what is being said about the show. But I agree with some, probably 10% of what she said, but the other 90% I don't agree with. Anyways, she says, to the question she was asked, can Christians watch Game of Thrones? And she says, yes, Christians can watch Game of Thrones. Christians need to reflect on their knee-jerk reaction to anything dealing with sex before making judgments about sin. So, she and there was several other articles that I had read by Christians, written by Christians, about that they all think that Game of Thrones can and should be watched by Christians, and that the graphic nudity, as IMDb would describe it, is nothing but art. And
it's like walking to the Chicago Art Museum.
That looking at art isn't a sin, and it shouldn't cause us to sin. That's what she, D.C. McAllister, said in her article. She said that there's no way that Christians should view this as a sin, that the act of sex is not sinful. And again,
this is where wrong.
This is where I agree, but I disagree.
Right.
It's all about setting. In marriage, sex is a beautiful thing. It's absolutely amazing and beautiful.
And it's a gift.
Yeah, it is. That two have become one through this act, and they grow together so much so that they have these relationships. It's not just for procreation.
Right. And I will say this, though. Church has made sex a dirty word.
Yes, they have.
And it's really not.
Yeah, no.
It's totally not.
No, it's not at all. And so, but likewise, outside of marriage, I would say it is a very dirty thing. Mm. It is. It is a very sinful act. And the way I look at it is, if you're a male or a female and you're doing sexual activities, it doesn't necessarily have to be sex, but sexual activities, just realize that you're doing that because you don't know if you're going to get married or not. You're doing that to possibly somebody else's wife or husband, and that's adultery.
Right. So, and I will say this: if there's a really cool conversation that Nancy Pearcey has in her book, "Love Thy Body," and how personhood theory, how you view the human body, should interpret how you view the other person for anything down to abortion, homosexuality, transgenderism, racism, but down to even just sex and how
Right.
in the mental and the emotional and the neuron firing that happens and all that. But before we go back into the Game of Thrones, you kind of mentioned something before we started recording, and you said that in your past, back we talked about this in episode 1, back when you're lighting up, getting high, doing whatever you wanted to do, you watch certain shows because of certain reasons.
Oh yeah, I mean the shows I watch. I mean, I was into pornography very heavily back before I rededicated my life to Christ. I really came back to God. So if I couldn't get it physically in another human being, in another woman, I would watch shows like this. Well, like this, I didn't watch this show obviously, but like there's a show called the HBO put out called Spartacus, which was the very same thing.
And that's on Netflix right now.
That's
right?
on Netflix, but it's the same thing that they just it's TV MA, and the same things that they described for Game of Thrones and why it was rated what it was is the same rating that they did for Spartacus. And
so
I'd watch it too.
So it's like basically take Game of Thrones and put it into Athens and Greece and
right. So it was all about Spartacus, yeah, and the gladiators. So. But that was full-on sex scenes, nudity, front and back, full up-tail, guys, girls. It was everything. And as a guy, that was appealing to me. Not just because of the warfare, but if I had certain urges, it was appealing to me for that reason as well.
I mean, but we'll just say it. When you see, I mean, I won't say every, because that's not true, but, I mean, there's a lot of guys and girls too that are very visually stimulated, for lack of a better word. And when you see these things, I mean, this is going to go completely look like it come from left field. But I was talking with our buddy Soche the other day. Nothing to do about this conversation, but about marketing, how marketing tactics work, and how they used to be, hey, here's our stuff, you should buy it, that'd be dope. And now it's like, oh, are you sad? Do you want to be happy? You should do and buy and get this. Hey, parents, if you really love your kids, you should buy them this. And it started creating this whole mindset that of I'm discontented, so I want something.
Right.
And I'm not saying everyone who watches Game of Thrones is that way. Like a lot of people I know don't watch Game of Thrones just because, I'm a lonely person, so I want to watch sex scenes. But
again, that's not the whole reason why I watched the show Spartacus. It was because of the fighting and the gore and
it had a cool storyline.
Yeah, I mean, the storyline grabbed me and drew me in, and you had to watch the next episode because you wanted to find out what happened next. So, I mean, I'm not saying that would be the only appeal to watch a show, right. But as you see those types of images, one, we have memories, and so when those urges do come up, people could draw back to those images, which, again, if you're thinking upon a woman to lust after her, well, Jesus says
already had sex with her. Yeah, so it's the same thing.
Yeah, so we have to really be careful with what we. Well, we said it in episode 3. Garbage in, garbage out is the teen or the church version that you always say, and then you said teen version was bad crap in, really bad crap out.
Crap in, crap out. Yeah. Yep. So what if someone said though, like, all right, Fuller, so I hear what you're saying. So. Game of Thrones, okay, fine. It has nudity, fine. It has graphic sex scenes. It has blood, gore, but blood and gore don't bother me too much. Makes me a little queasy, but I'm cool with that. It's a boss storyline. I love dragons. I mean, it's just a cool show. And you know what? Sex and nudity, it doesn't really bother me that much. Like, how would you respond to that? Because I know that's what some people say is, or especially I've talked to girls and they're like, well, obviously girls don't, turn me on. It's like I see boobs and it's like, okay, whatever. So how would you answer someone who says, you know what? The sex stuff really doesn't bother me. It doesn't faze me.
I would say...
That's a hard question, I know.
I would say that the people who say those types of things, because I'm sure it's not just girls that our body parts are being exposed in the show. Again, I've never seen it, so if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me.
There's full frontals.
So
not that I know.
If there's any kind of guy thing in there, let's be real. Who's going to sit here and tell people, oh, yeah, I watch it for this reason? I mean, this is Real Talk podcast right here, so because it's Real Talk, I'm going to say that those people are probably liars. I'm going to say that they probably do watch it for some sort of physical aspect, whether they just like the bulging muscles on a guy or something like that. There's still a physical attraction because that's how we're created.
Right.
We are created to be attracted to the opposite sex. And so you have to be careful. You have to be careful. Men and women have to be careful with what they allow themselves to see, hear, read, all that stuff. Because if we're not, we can open the door for Satan to get a foothold in.
Right, and it lowers down our walls. It it kind of shoves our consciousness in a different place.
Right.
And even the mindset, because I know like there's some girls that I talk to who say, you know what, like literally physical attraction doesn't mean much to me. He can be butt ugly, but as long as they're nice to me, it's okay. But when I think about it, it's kind of the idea too of like, okay, so what are these films portraying as well?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're saying that, I mean, are they saying rape is okay or not? Maybe not, but they almost paint this picture of the body is nothing more than flesh and blood,
right.
And that we have the physical side and we have the mental, spiritual side, kind of like the Platonic theory of you have two different worlds. You have the material world, which doesn't matter, which there was a lot of people back in Paul's day who said, you know what? The physical world, John, back in Revelation, one of those passages, I don't remember which church it was, there was a group that said, you know what? The physical body is just physical. When we die, it doesn't matter because we're getting new bodies, we're getting resurrected, so I could drink, I could smoke, I could chew, I can hang with those who do, and I can have sex and do all these different things,
You're a millennial who just, predated yourself.
Dude, that's pretty dope, and I didn't even stutter. I did not even stutter.
That is like a 1950s saying.
I've been hanging out with Pastor Scott too much.
I love it,
Hey,
though.
Pastor Scott. So, that was so bad. No. Dude, I lost train of thought. Let's bring it back in. So, but it's kind of the idea of I literally lost my train of thought.
So you were talking about John writing to the church and
and how the fact of the body is just a physical piece of flesh. It doesn't matter. But God tells us, honor God with your body. Mm-hmm. We see that in Romans 12, 1 and 2, where you're a living sacrifice, holy, pleasing, acceptable to God. And you're supposed to, your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. In fact, our bodies is going to be resurrected. So I believe that the bodies we're going to have on the new earth will look, I'm going to look good no matter what.
I'm just hoping, I'm hoping because gluttony is a sin, I'll be a thin at least.
Swole.
Yeah, right.
Jesus was, I actually don't think Jesus was a wood carpenter. I think Jesus was a stonemason.
We had this conversation,
which
would make sense because of the geographical location they were in.
Which just basically means Jesus is probably buff, and if he had a perfect body, I expect one of those two Jesus when I get to
I don't
heaven.
want a dad bod.
I'm just saying, I want that chiseledness. But
anyways, bringing it back in.
Bring it back in, but it's the idea of what are we when we glorify these shows, what are we saying about the body? What are we saying about relationships between people? What are we saying for all these different things? And the question is this something that goes contrary to your Christian worldview, or does it help build you up and edify you and glorify? Right. Or is it one of those things where, I wish I could live in this reality, but I can't because I'm a Christian, so I'm just going to watch people live in that reality.
Right.
So we can have these mental conversations with people all day and these metaphysical ethics, whatever. But if we're Christians, if we're followers of Jesus, we're called to live according to what Jesus taught and what the Bible teaches us. So I guess my question for you is are there any scriptures that kind of pop out in your mind that would kind of talk about this whole idea of whether it's Game of Thrones, Orange is the New Black, any of these TV MA shows that are out there?
Well, before we get into that, let me real quick, as a tag to the pornography aspect that we were talking about, let me just tag this in. I just pulled up the, it's called covetedeyes.com.
Oh, yep, I use them.
So obviously stats. You're a stat guy.
I love my stats.
I like stats every once in a while, so I'm going to throw it out there. But the stat says that 69% of boys and 55% of girls have seen porn showing same-sex intercourse. So that's same-sex intercourse. That number's got to be higher if it's opposite sex.
That's just, that's gay sex.
So again, back to what I said earlier, somebody that says, I don't watch it for any kind of physical attraction thing, I'm going to call you a liar, because that's probably most of humanity does. Christians included would watch certain things being like, we said it, the celebrity crush. Who's your celebrity crush?
Right, exactly.
It's the same thing.
And sex actually actually does change your mind and your chemical makeup in your brain.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you hear about these terrible, terrible situations where guys expect girls to perform a certain way based on what they have seen.
Right.
And it just destroys everything. It makes the body almost worthless.
Right.
Is really what it is.
Well, for those who are married or plan to be married, it can destroy your marriage as well. It
damages the relationship between the two.
Big time. yeah, so I liked kind of our dude, John Piper,
John Piper. Let's go, Piper.
So this came from, obviously, desiringgod.org. John Piper was asked by a caller. I think her name was Emily, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But
we'll call her Emily. We'll call her Emily.
I've got the interview in the show, or we could put it in the show notes if you guys want.
Yep, I'll put it in the show notes.
But he says he was asked questions, should Christians watch Game of Thrones? So, I wanted to kind of do a contrast of what some people say and what other people say. I know we're kind of dragging this portion on. But he said, do you believe there's a difference between film nudity versus porn? That was the question that was kind of asked along with that. And his response, the closer I get to death and meeting Jesus personally face to face and giving an account for my life and for the careless words I have spoken, that's out of Matthew 12:36, and how much more for intentional stares, the surer I am of my resolve never intentionally to look at a TV show or a movie or a website or a magazine where I know I will see photos of or films of nudity. Never. That is my resolve, and the closer I get to death, the better I feel about that, and the more committed I become. It's like, go John Piper. Like, that's a good attitude to have.
So it's the question of, by you watching shows that has a bunch of boobs in it, does that really help your walk with Jesus?
Right.
Like, does that really get you a little step closer to Jesus? I mean, I can flat out tell you from my experience, the answer is nope.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious, but it's so I guess the question, I mean, so I mentioned, are there any verses? We kind of hit some random verses here and there.
Yeah.
And, we could put a lot of other verses in about what Jesus said about whoever looks at a woman, and lust after her, they've already committed adultery in their heart.
The hardest part for preparing for this show was to limit the amount of verses, scriptures we used, so this podcast didn't go on for 4 hours.
Right, definitely.
But when I kind of was doing some research, I just pulled up 3 little points with scriptures that deal with these issues from the show. One of them was rape. That one, for some reason, really bothers me.
Oh, I don't like it.
Whether it's in a good light or a bad light in a show, I can't.
Is there such thing as a good?
Well,
light?
I don't know.
I mean,
but I don't know. I don't watch shows that have that.
Just
but
makes me mad,
like Law and Order or something. Anytime somebody's like raped or anything, like it really bugs me.
That's it should.
Yeah, right. And just for that reason, I don't watch Law and Order, because I don't like even seeing storylines about that. And I know it's a real thing, and I'm not trying to put that it's not something that should be discussed, but it bothers me in my soul I feel the hurt that could bring. So I brought up a little scripture on that out of Deuteronomy, Old Testament. Whoop. 22, 25 through 29. It's a little bit of a longer passage, but it's worth it if you listen. It says, "But if a man finds a betrothed young woman in the countryside, and the man forces her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. There is in the young woman no sin deserving of death. For just as when a man rises against his neighbor and kills him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the countryside, and the betrothed young woman cried out, but there was no one to save her." If a man finds I'm not going to read that one, because I was going to read that, but it kind of goes on. It's kind of repetitive a little bit.
Yep.
So I know some people will be like, dude, that was the Old Testament.
That's the law,
bro. What was I watching? Oh, Buck Denver. Have you ever heard of Buck Denver? What's in the Bible? By, what is his name? He was Phil Vischer, creator of VeggieTales.
Oh, okay, yes.
So he's got a show out there now called What's in the Bible with Buck Denver, and it's all puppets. It's like a spoof off the Muppets. It's really fantastic. But he talks about the differences in the laws. So there was physical laws for that day and time period because of like hygiene and stuff.
Right.
And then there was spiritual laws that carry through. And he...
Yeah, I call them civil, ceremonial, and moral laws.
Right, yeah. So, same thing, yeah. Yep. I'm dumb, so I didn't go to
all right.
seminary or anything like that, so I'm just a steel worker.
Maybe you needed a youth pastor who taught you that. Nope.
There we go. I watch Buck Denver.
There you go. What did Buck Denver say?
Anyways, so you have to look at some of these things and why they were laws. But that's a whole nother podcast episode that could be done about the differences between these laws. But I want to encourage people that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And though we may not go out and slay people in this day and age and country for rape, honestly, I think we should. That's just my personal opinion on it. But I think the heart of the matter is still there, that it's super wrong.
Well, to the point where the guy should be killed.
Right, and the girl has no sin. I mean, that's what it said. I mean,
right. And so, which I will say this, so that means God actually uplifts the afflicted, and God actually uplifts those who were sinned against.
Right.
And he takes care of those.
Right.
But he's also a judge.
Yep.
And so, yeah, we should never... I get, like, when I see rape cases, and, like, I was hearing these people battle about the moral argument in apologetics and the fact of where does morality come from? And the apologists got this guy all the way down to say, okay, so if it was better for the entire human race that all these girls would get raped so that their human race could continue, is that morally acceptable? And he said, well, of course, because it betters the human race. And the guy's like, are you kidding me?
Holy cow.
And
that's a rep debate line if I've ever heard one.
That fired me up
because
and it's the whole idea of people just have no shame.
Yeah.
And we need to uplift those who were sinned against. But more than even just that, it's the fact of God hates rape, so why should we glorify it?
Right. And right there, I mean, it spells it out in the Bible back in Deuteronomy, back in the days of the law.
Right.
How much what he thinks about that, it deserves death.
Right, exactly.
So,
and then for the nudity aspect, we see it all the way through. I mean, even the Old Testament, where when Adam and Eve sinned, they were ashamed, so they put on clothes.
Right.
Which clothes is actually a reminder that we have sinned.
That we're idiots.
And you see throughout the entire Old Testament, like when Noah was found naked, that was to his shame.
Right.
And then when you see Jesus and Paul, everyone they're like, not like the whole idea of modest is hottest, but it is. But it's more the fact of, our bodies are gifts. Our bodies are holy possessions, holy temples. So therefore, nudity is also, honestly, it's a sacred thing between a husband and a wife. It's the ultimate... what's the word? Intimacy. Like it's the physical intimacy that should represent the emotional and spiritual intimacy between that.
Right.
And we see that as a beautiful thing. But now this is an issue. The next one with the violence and the gore. This is one that most Christians are just like, just violence and gore.
Right.
But does the Bible even say anything about that?
There's actually a lot of scripture that talks about it. I've narrowed it down to one passage. If you guys want more passages on it, get a hold of us again, and I'll send you stuff. But the passage I have is Proverbs 2:29 through 32. It says, "Do not devise harm against your neighbor while he lives securely beside you. Do not content with a man without cause, if he has done no harm to you. Do not envy a man of violence, and do not choose any of his ways, for the devious are an abomination to the Lord." So, what that scripture spoke to me is, especially in verse 31, where it says, "Do not envy a man of violence." To me, it speaks that we should not glorify war,
pillaging, and
pillaging and murder, and it shouldn't be glorified. We shouldn't ever want to do that, which has really hit me in preparation for this podcast. About some of the stuff I watch. It's not rated
Real
TV.
talk, man. Here we go.
MA. It's not even rated R, but some of the PG-13 movies that I have that have a little bit of, legs being blown off or something like that, and I'm like,
Patriot.
Yeah, I'm really intently watching this, and it's like, oh, this is awesome. And from a little boy, I was like, I want to go join the army and do some shooting and killing, and like I always played war as a kid. And this preparation for this podcast has really hit me hard. I do believe, I don't want people to mistake me and say, oh, I say that like protecting your family, protecting your country. Praise God for our servicemen and our police officers. Praise God for them and pray for them every day, because you wouldn't want their job. We all think we do until you're in it. But there's a reason why soldiers come back from wars all messed up,
Right.
And it's a real thing. And I don't think we should glorify war, but it's a necessary evil in this world. That's the way I would
Because
put
the
it.
world's broken.
Right. Even the Israelites went to war
Right.
over God's
And
kingdom.
see, and I'm a pacifist.
Right.
I'm on the other side sometimes.
Yeah.
So-
Well, and I have been too. I've been an extreme pacifist, to where it's like, oh, if somebody broke in my house, I wouldn't do anything to stop them, even if
that
they tried to kill
sucks.
me and my family.
That
Like I would just wait for God. And
I
it's
had a
like,
baseball bat next to my bed.
and
But-
then now I'm kind of the other way with it.
But either way, so it's kind of the idea of, when you see shows like this, let's come out of the Game of Thrones. Let's talk about all of media,
Right.
because when you look at Netflix, dude, okay. So
riddled with it.
I was scrolling through Netflix the other night because I had to do some work. I was on my computer, so I just put normally Madam Secretary just goes on, or Merlin or NCIS or something like
Right.
that. But I'm like, you know what? We're gonna put something on I haven't seen before, just so I can listen to it. And every single show that I'm like, dude, this looks freaking sweet.
Yeah.
DVMA, put it up. Sex through everything, like
Yep.
full, and even like now I will say this for parents and teens out there listening, IMDb explicitly tells you what happened, so there's no
Right.
excuse. So
Right.
you got to see it coming. Like it
Yep.
tells you all the dirty, like in verbal process.
Pretty much, if it's R or MA, you should probably look up why it's rated that before you watch it.
Well, this is what I tell people: it's MA. It means boobs
Yeah.
and sex. Like
Yeah.
that's no
Right.
question. That's what TVMA
Yep.
means. Because if not, it's TV-14. But it's the fact of Netflix and today's media. They're putting sex into everything because
Right.
that's what sells and that's what gets people's viewer. Now, obviously, the cinematography might be fantastic, the costume might be great, the storyline might be good,
Special
but-
effects.
but everything is phenomenal. But there's so much sex in there,
Right.
And it comes down to the question of, is that really helping you or not? And if someone said, "Oh, well, it doesn't really do anything," I would argue.
Let me ask
Oh,
the
go
question
ahead.
real
I
fast.
was on a rant.
Does the sex scenes add anything to the show?
Well, in the secular people's mind, they're like, yeah.
But if you take it out, will it, as a Christian, would it detract? Because you have the things like Clear Play, right?
Right.
For watching movies that automatic. If you pay the subscription and update your whatever the Clear Play player, it cuts that stuff out. Like my brother-in-law and sister-in-law have it, and they're able to watch like PG-13, and they stay away from rated R. But PG-13 movies that have the swearing in it, and it cuts all that stuff out.
Right.
So I mean, you can still watch certain
You can
movies
figure
if you
things
have
out.
something like that. But I
Right.
mean, I don't think it detracts. I guess it doesn't. It doesn't take anything away from the show for me.
No.
Like if they cut all that stuff out, even if they cut out all the language, it doesn't take away from the storyline at all. I mean, there's so what? Why is it even in there?
Oh, sex
I mean,
sells. That's
right.
I mean, everyone knows it.
Right.
Sex sells.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I've always told teens this. It's everything in life, and this is very hard because I'm a lazy millennial sometimes. Is everything in life either pushes you towards Jesus,
Right.
or it draws you away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard reality for us to live in. And Piper mentioned that as he gets closer to death, which the dude's in his late 70s, I think, or I know he's dealing with something right now. I don't know
Yeah,
what it is.
it's going to be a sad day when he goes.
Right. And we've lost some great heroes of the faith recently with Billy Graham and
I love Billy Graham. I'm
R.C.
sorry.
Sproul is another one.
Yeah.
Eugene Peterson. These guys who are dying. They have a different perspective on life than even we do, and that's kind of where it goes down to. It is, the where the rubber meets the road is, should a Christian watch Game of Thrones? I think the question of I don't think that's the right question of should a Christian watch Game of Thrones. The real question should be is what type of content should a Christian watch in general?
Right.
Now, and whatever you watch, you glorify, and whatever you partake in, obviously you glorify. And your kids are watching you. People are watching you, and now should you live your life just so because everyone's a glass mirror? Well, no, but you're supposed to live your life worthy of the gospel of Jesus, no matter what you do.
Well, yeah. I mean, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
We're bad at that.
I'm about to go. I'm about to take off, man.
All right, man. You go all full John Piper on me here in a sec. I just want to throw in this is a conversation you and I've been having for months. Something God has dealt with me strongly on over the past few months is that be holy as I am holy. And we've talked about, I've had even conversations. I'll leave them unnamed, but with people that say, "Yeah, but Christians, we'll never we'll never be able to obtain that holiness
Never
that
be perfect
Jesus. Yeah, well,
anyways.
exactly. And so, why should we not try? Why we should always strive. We should always be moving in that direction to be holy like God. And if you want to watch them shows with Jesus sitting next to you,
You probably shouldn't watch it at all.
what's your bracelet say again?
WWJD.
Oh, there you go. So,
What would Jesus do?
anyways, go ahead and take off.
No, so it's more the fact of, and you're the one who kind of brought me onto this. It's the whole idea of, well, why is there even why is this even a conversation? I mean, Kevin DeYoung even said, why are we even talking about should a Christian watch Game of Thrones?
Right.
The answer should be no, and the reason is the more we engage in sin, the less likely we are to abstain from it. The less likely we
Right.
are to view it as bad. We dumb down sin, and honestly, I think all Christians do this. That's the struggle of the human life. And I've been wrestling with my faith a lot recently, just in terms of what does it mean to actually follow God, and what does it mean to pursue Him, and all these various different questions. But at the end of the day, the question remains is really, why do you want to watch Game of Thrones? Why do you want to watch Spartacus? Why do you want to watch 300? Why do you want to watch Orange is the New Black? And it's, some people are like, oh, that's just my guilty pleasure. And I get that. I hear it. Ain't good enough. And I don't want to be over here being the Bible bashing, Bible thumper, but nor would people who call those people Bible thumpers are people that want to be able to do what they want to do without any consequences.
And that's the thing. Are we doing it because it glorifies God? Are we watching these shows because it glorifies God? Or are we watching them, and when we're faced with truth, are we making excuses to sin?
Crap in, crap out.
Right.
Good stuff in, good stuff out. Well, hey, so we're going to land the plane on this conversation, though, and some of this was a rabbit trail. Some of this was maybe hopefully beneficial in some way, shape, or form. But at the end of the day, I mean, as a Christian, this is what it is. As a Christian, we're called to be holy, which doesn't mean perfect. It actually means set apart. It means you're different. You're distinct. You're not even a part of this conversation.
That reference is 1 Peter 1:16, by the way.
1 Peter 1:16. So as a Christian, as a believer, my question for you is the fact of, well, why do you even want to watch it? And if your answer is, oh, well, I want to engage in the community, try again.
So, Mark,
Try again.
I got a final question then.
Uh-oh.
So, should Christians watch Game of Thrones?
Heck no. Crap no. Whatever Christian cuss word you want to put in front of that, no. Thank you, Tim Hawkins, and thank you, John Chris.
Yes.
So
I would agree with you. I would say that based on all the research we've done, studying the scriptures, looking at people's ideas from both sides of the aisles, my opinion, and this is real talk, so if you have a differing opinion, contact us. We're not opposed to it. We've been cussed out several times, so
it's kind of humorous.
it is, but let us know. But I would have to agree with you, Mark, that no, Christians shouldn't watch it, and we should really take inventory on what we do.
Ooh,
see.
I like that word. Take inventory on what we do and what we see. So there's your thought for the day. Take inventory on what you see and what you do and what you entertain yourself with. Well, hey, so last week we were not able to end with our favorite part of the whole show.
I couldn't
Kohler.
believe you didn't come up with something.
Well, I didn't think about it. I was just like, dude, I was in like, I was fangirling because Justin Herman's one of my heroes.
Yeah,
He's one
we
of my
know.
heroes. So, anyway, so I was just like, I can't believe I'm talking with this man right now.
You said you're the GOAT like how many times, which I'm a millennial, but I still don't know what that means. But
that's okay. No one knows what a Visco girl means either, but we just keep rolling with it. So, anywho, Fuller, do you have a fun fact?
Fun fact.
I'm not even going to try. Jagger's little.
Where's Jagger at?
Goodness.
Since we're talking about things we should watch and shouldn't watch, Toy Story 2. Did you know it was almost deleted?
Like as in like oops, or like they almost scrapped the whole
So a command entered into the master machine, quote unquote, where the animation for Toy Story 2 was stored, deleted 90% of the work the Pixar team had done on it.
What?
As Mental Floss describes, a plan was quickly hatched to restore the data from a regular backup, which meant that only half a day of work would have been lost. But the backup system had failed.
No.
Pixar, incredibly, did not have a copy of the Toy Story 2 files on its server. Fortunately, the film's technical director had a copy she had been working on from home, and much of it was restored.
I just got stressed out, bro.
We almost didn't have Toy Story 2. I would have been sad.
Someone needed Control Z that stuff. Anywho, that stressed me out. My hands are sweaty now because of that. That was dumb. That was dumb. But hey, either way, thanks again for listening.
Thank
you
you,
guys
guys.
are phenomenal. Before we say take it easy, just a reminder, we will take free coffee.
Always free coffee.
Always free coffee. Now,
be ye holy as I am holy.
laters.
Thank you for listening to Real Talk Christian. To help get our podcast into the ears of other people who need to hear these conversations, we would love for you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. To keep the conversations going, feel free to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and share our content with others. See you next time.